Before we begin, I would like to give a small shout out to the Hollow Owl here on YouTube and Soul Digital Art on Twitter. The Owl is a fellow Helliverse fan, and the video he made about everyone's favorite red-suited radio host is quite good, and Soul Digital makes pretty good artwork and her comms are open. For reference, she made the image I use for both my Twitter and channel profile. I'm always happy to look out for fellow content creators and give them a deserved shout out whenever able. So if you have any extra time, go and check them out. Done? Great. Right-ho! So upon doing a rewatch of Hazbin Hotel for the singular purpose of making videos like this, hardly a cross to bear, I figured, why not do something about the Dick Master himself, Adam? And the big reason as to why is because that he, much like most of our colorful cast of characters, is someone who can grab our attention and is very entertaining. You can't tell me that whenever he was on screen, you weren't enjoying yourself and perhaps snickering a little bit because he is actually pretty funny.
Mr. Adam, sir.
Call me Dick Master.
Your love is vile and blasphemous.
Hot as fuck, though.
It's a solution to our biggest problem.
Oh, herpes. Yeah, that's a bitch.
However, when it comes to laughing, I do save my deep and healthy laughs for a select few in this show.
My daughter wants to see me. Take that, depression!
What? Do you think we're a bunch of pussies?
I'm ready to punish some bad boys.
Never mind, I'm out.
However, upon doing my latest rewatch of the show, I began to ask some questions about Adam and began to wonder why he's characterized in the way that he is. In terms of the show's themes, he acts as a perfect antagonist for Season 1, as he's someone who can get all of hell abuzz instead of just our primary cast. And he acts as a near-perfect mirror image of Charlie when you compare how they want to deal with the sinners. But the questions remain. Why is Adam the way that he is? Why does he never remove his mask? And why is he, of all people, commanding the angels into hell? And I believe I was able to gain an answer when watching his last few minutes of screen time during his defeat and the look he gives to Lute as he breathes his last breath. And that answer is that Adam, much like Lucifer, is a thoroughly depressed and broken individual. He's just better at masking it. So why don't we kick this little theory off and do a little examination of the first man? And, full disclosure, I will not be making biblical or theological comparisons, and instead just go by what we're shown and told in-universe, in addition to a little theorizing on my part. Because if such comparisons were to be done, this video would go into so many different directions, and I don't think we have that kind of time. But before we can look at the questions posited during the last rewatch, first we must look at who he is when we first see him, because, as we all know, first impressions are indeed everything. And Adam is certainly one that can leave an impression. Maybe not the best he could have given for Charlie, but it was bountiful for us as viewers. Because following our first glimpse at who Adam is, we see that he is someone who has an ego the size of the Death Star, has a strong vendetta against the citizens of Hell, and who swears more than just about anyone except for Angel, which, when I say that out loud, it sounds just terribly ironic. And when pondering as to why he's characterized in such a way, considering that no one ever just starts out their life with such a personality or outlook, I think it would be best to go back to the very beginning in the Garden of Eden, where it was just him and Lily. Because if you're going to investigate something or someone, it's best to start with their genesis. And based on what information we're given, at least according to Charlie's narration, is that Adam wanted to exert control over his wife, which caused her to flee the garden and find comfort in the arms of Lucifer. I would like to note that I find it interesting that the opening never states that he took a bite of the forbidden fruit, so when he says,
Yeah, I've never made a mistake in my fucking life.
it could be plausible that he never actually took a bite. This is based purely on the fact that we're never told that he had a taste, and this could be subject to change, but for the remainder of this video, let us assume that he did indeed take a bite. Anyways, past the garden, getting cucked by Lucifer twice, the fall of man, and his eventual death, Adam was then the first human soul to be allowed access into heaven. And it's here, I believe, where his egotistical mindset took root. Now, let's just say that for the purposes of argument, that he did indeed start off with the asshole personality that we see throughout the show, because if so, I believe the events of Eden may have humbled him severely as he lost his place in the paradise that was quite literally made for both him and his wives. It sounds like the type of situation that would cause someone to fall into a deep and dark state. The fact that the same guy got both your wives with quick succession would undoubtedly do some damage. And upon reaching the pearly gates, Adam would be told for thousands upon thousands of years that he was the first man to walk the earth and that everyone that exists owes their life to him. And I believe that went to his head in the worst type of way. So when he says things like this,
I'm fucking Adam! I'm the fucking man! I started everything on Earth! All of mankind came from these fucking nuts!
he's technically correct. I mean, he's got a god complex the size of Texas, but he's not wrong, is he? And if someone was to hear that over and over and over and over again, I can imagine that they would become enveloped by the toxic persona he now has as he views himself as a celebrity of sorts. I imagine being known as the first man to enter heaven would cause someone to feel that way fairly quickly, since he acts as though he has immunity from consequences and can simply do as he pleases. And based around his interaction with Sarah, the only person that he won't go against, considering she outranks him by a wide margin, he's allowed to do just about whatever he wishes, whether it be with the exterminations or otherwise, with the exception of not blabbing about his activities. Which seems like a very easy rule to not break, and yet his ego went ahead and let him break it anyway. This is very simple. Don't complicate it. He did. But I do give credit where it is due, and I will give his rockstar persona a slight pass because it gave us a guitar that doubles as an axe. Legendary. Plus, Hell is Forever is an absolute banger, and nobody can tell me otherwise. So that's most likely where he got his galaxy-sized ego from, and that leads us into the question as to why someone who would have a form of celebrity status in heaven always has his face covered by a demon-like mask. I mean, he eats and drinks with it on. That seems like a bit much, especially since we see Lute without her mask several times, but there's not a single scene where Adam isn't wearing his, aside from when it was literally beaten off his face. And when we do see him without it before he dies, the joke-cracking rockstar personality that we've seen up until this point vanishes, and he begins to completely unravel. From a design perspective, his mask, and by association, the masks of the exorcists, resemble that of imps based on what we've seen from Hell of a Boss. You could surmise that the masks are designed in this way to act as a form of mockery towards those whom the angels are coming down to exterminate, in much the same way how Valak from the Conjuring universe takes the form of a nun to mock God, the church, and those who would stand against the demon's plans. And based around what we've seen of him so far, I believe that he wears the mask because it makes him feel protected as well as powerful, considering that he never removes it, and that visage is associated directly with the act of exterminating the sinners. An image that probably strikes fear into the hearts of those unfortunate enough to be caught outside when he sweeps through the city. And whenever he's wearing that mask, he's loud, he's confident, and totally unafraid. But, like Alistair said when he described masking to a T,
just because you see a smile, don't think you know what's going on underneath. A smile is a valuable tool, my dear. It inspires your friends, keeps your enemies guessing, and ensures that no matter what comes your way, you're the one in control.
Once that fortification is demolished, so too is his strength and courage, to the point where he can do nothing but simply attempt to bring down those around him by pontificating about how great he is compared to them. You could make a comparison to how Angel acts in private versus in public, up until the point where he and Husk had their duet in episode 4. So once he's exposed for all to see, with his army in shambles and his composure now totally obliterated, all he can do is spew what he's been told by himself and by others across millennia in an attempt to keep himself and his ego propped up until he's run through by Nifty. Which leads us into our next question of why he is the one leading the angelic forces into hell, especially if the archangels do exist in this universe. It seems more like something they'd be tasked with. So, why Adam? It seems like an odd choice when you think about it. I mean, even if you haven't read the Bible and are unfamiliar with Christianity, you still know who Adam and Eve are. So, well known and famous, yes, but why is he given command of the army? But if you think about how he must have his ego affirmed continuously, whether by himself or by others, in addition to his past, to the possibility of his mask being used as a form of protection, it becomes somewhat plausible as to why he's the one leading the charge. Now, we know that Adam doesn't think very highly of the denizens of hell, a feeling shared by Lucifer as well, considering he let the exterminations happen to begin with.
These are our people, Dad. I have to try.
Our people, Charlie,
Are awful! They got gifted free will, and look what they did with it! Everything's terrible!
And in Adam's defense, being the one who did indeed start everything on Earth, to see your descendants across thousands of years fall short of being able to reach heaven in numerous ways, from one bad act to acts like that of Genghis Khan, who eliminated so many people that he changed the climate of the planet, on top of the psychological theorizing I suggested beforehand, and losing the paradise that was Eden in addition to his wives. I can imagine that can become quite infuriating and taxing on the mind. So when it comes to the prologue of the series, noting that Hell's uprising was the reason behind why Sarah let the exterminations happen, I imagine Adam was chosen or perhaps volunteered to lead the extermination in an attempt to undo the damage that was done during the fall of man, and to maybe be used as a way to vent his frustrations about his past and himself. Call it a therapy of sorts, not unlike how many of us get our angst out through the gym, gamer rage, or various hobbies.
But you know what saved us? We found something we enjoy doing. Every man needs himself a hobby.
He could also be using this to get some payback against Lucifer in his own way, since Lu is the main reason why Hell exists, and he did participate quite extensively in the fall of man. Plus, based on their interactions during the battle in episode 8, Adam does seem to vocalize his hatred for the fallen angel quite clearly and explosively. And let's be honest about the extermination for a moment here. It is seen as a bad thing because Charlie is the protagonist of the series, and we do love the story arcs of the Hazbin fam, but let us not forget that this is Hell, and we as the audience are very insulated from its general population, aside from a few scenes here and there. Now, the show does appear to have a disconnect in how people are selected as winners and sinners, which will most likely be delved into with more detail in the next season, and I am by no means giving Adam or Sarah a pass for their war crimes, but please bear with me for just a moment and consider the types of people in Hell. I mean, I think it's fair to say that some of the people down there are objectively horrible. Consider anyone who hires IMP, since their entire business model is eliminating someone up top for a sinner. And since those who IMP takes care of end up in hell with those who wanted them gone, this means that there's a good to fair chance that somebody who was genuinely innocent and good got sent downwards instead of up because someone down below had an axe to grind.
But it's a family. Under what circumstances would we ever need to kill a human family?
I mean, if that's what the client wants.
I can't seem to get the phrase misery loves company from my mind. So even though the disconnect does exist and those allowing and participating in the exterminations aren't exactly innocent, it's worth considering that those that they're slaying down below may not be so innocent either. As an example, Rosie is absolutely spectacular and deserves a lot more screen time, and I think I can speak for everyone when I say we want her to come back and be that loving, motherly figure that we all know and love her to be. But Alistair does call her the most vicious overlord this side of the pentagram, so there is a side to her that we have not yet seen that's probably quite terrifying. Anyway, back on topic. When it comes to the introduction of Adam as a character in the show, he's been doing this little song and dance with the sinners and the angels for so long that he now sees it as nothing more but a form of entertainment. If he did indeed use it as a way to vent his frustrations, it's fair to say that he's moved beyond that by this point. I mean, the way he talks about it, typically with a shit-eating grin that could give Radio Antlers a run for his money, it almost seems like it's the one time of the year he looks forward to more than anything. Almost like a holiday of sorts.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Although it may be possible that he's lost the plot in more ways than one, Vaggie did say that the angelic forces were bloodthirsty, which fits, and deranged, and he does break the fourth wall, which typically in fiction, apart from say Spaceballs or Ferris Bueller, where it's a self-aware story, means that the character doing the breaking is, on a technical level, clinically insane.
You might want to look away for this. Now this little piggy went to...
Which fits the characterization outlined in this theory, a broken individual with an inflated ego turning into a sadistic killer as time goes on. It certainly fits the standard of characterization of most of the villains made within the last decade, where they burn down an orphanage with everyone inside, and when asked as to why they did it, they say something like, "Because my mother yelled at me when I was 5, or "The Wi-Fi on my plane wasn't free," or something equally as tragic. But to Adam's credit, he's not on the same level as Loot is with this type of thing, as she can apparently say things that can even catch him off guard.
Quit Badgie's cutmouth out her ass! You just chill, Loot, fuck.
And since her uniform always appears to have blood on it, I would wager that she enjoys doing her job a little too much. And finally, cut to the Stabathon and consider what I mentioned earlier about the smile he gives to Loot as he dies. Now, I don't know about any of you, but if Nifty went ahead and jabbed me anywhere from 20 to 30 times, or more, a pleasant smile is the last thing I'd be wearing in my final moments, even if the show's equivalent of a death metal chick was standing over me. Such a moment raises the question as to why he smiles, and it reminds me quite a bit of the ending of Dracula when the Count is staked and, as Mina states in her diary, "I shall be glad as long as I live that even in that moment of final dissolution, there was in the face a look of peace, such as I never could have imagined might have rested there." And if this theory about him concealing his depressed and broken state with his rockstar persona, killing sprees, and literal mask hold any water, you could say that in this one moment he's found a sense of serenity for the first time in a long time. Like a burden is being lifted from his shoulders, and perhaps having someone, in this case a woman, actually giving a damn about his well-being may have softened Nifty's blows to some extent. His expression in his final moments really makes you think, because, like I said, Nifty went ham on him, and that little maniac doesn't strike me as someone who does the job half-assed. Call it a feeling, like a knife in your chest. So it could very well be possible that in ending his life, Nifty set Adam free. And if he does show up again in hell, he may end up enjoying himself as the rules and regulations are far more laxed than they appear to be in heaven. We already know he's a fan of the music down there, so maybe he'll start a band or something. And if he doesn't show up and is truly gone, maybe he had finally found the peace he had been lacking for so long. So, yeah, that was just my little theory about Adam, and I hope you viewers enjoyed it. I'm also running a poll to see what video you guys would like to see next, and this is something I may end up doing more going forward, so please head over to my community tab and cast your vote for whichever video you think should be made next. Don't forget to let me know your thoughts in the comments, hit the like button in the name of the Dickmaster, and I do hope to have the next video out sometime soon, so please subscribe and ring that little bell. In the meantime, Godspeed, I hope to see each of you in the next installment.